My background is really one that's been rooted in service almost my entire life. I joined the Army right after 9/11, signed a 12-year commitment for ROTC, active duty, and the reserves. And I, was just really driven intrinsically by what happened. I grew up in New Jersey, very humble beginnings. And one of my friends from high school lost his dad in 9/11. And so that was really a call to service. And so I was on active duty for just under 5 years, was in 5 countries in 5 years, had the opportunity to command soldiers. But one of the things that I saw firsthand was a real issue of military members not getting access to help that they needed. And that could be mental health help or substance abuse treatment or really anything. And coming home from combat, but yet then taking their own lives. And that's kind of the ultimate manifestation of, really not getting help. And so in 2010, when I got off active duty, I did two things. First, I had to find a job. I took the GMAT in combat. Needless to say, that's a suboptimal condition to take the GMAT. So I didn't do so well. So it's pretty tough to try to get into a business school. So I fought my way into or onto Wall Street. Got rejected from a lot of places, but the French bank, BNP Paribas, the JP Morgan of Europe, they gave me a shot. And so here I am. I know nothing about finance. I have to pass my series exams, and I've broken into Wall Street while I'm living on my sister's couch. And so it was a tough transition, but one that was, I think, at least proved to me that the concept of what we learn in the military about being resilient and never giving up is so important. Point one. And point two, it's hard to sometimes make the transition, but there were not many transition, if any, transition programs for veterans back then, and kind of knew that something had to be done. And so I founded Stop Soldier Suicide in 2010 as well. And I brought in two of my buddies that I went to ROTC with, who one was still in Afghanistan at the time, one had just gotten back from Afghanistan. And I pitched them on the idea for the business model, which, God, I'd never started a business before, and I certainly knew nothing about nonprofits. But we dove in head first. And so I've been a volunteer with Stop Soldier Suicide for 15 years now. Was the CEO for 7 years. While working full-time on Wall Street, I ended up getting recruited over to Goldman Sachs. So I spent some time as a buy-side and sell-side investor for public companies, predominantly in the energy commodity space, and been involved with Stop Soldier Suicide ever since. And I have since founded another telemedicine business. We're private equity backed. When people have meaningful, purposeful employment, that gives them something that they can be passionate about, right? It gives them, that sense of meaning and something that they can work towards. It also provides a sense of community, potentially building something alongside other people. If you're really good and successful, potentially, using those additional resources or that capital to give back. And so I truly believe that that's one of the biggest issues facing not only the veteran community, but our society writ large is, how do we create productive, members of society that are marching towards, common goals, and through employment and gainful employment. That's certainly one of the ways to do it. Going back to the earliest days of starting this, you put up a website, you put up a Facebook page, and you put your personal cell phone number on that Facebook page. And, I'm sitting on a trading floor in New York City at an investment bank trying to learn the difference between a debt and an equity instrument, a bond or a piece of stock. I knew nothing about this stuff. And my cell phone's ringing, and I jump into a conference room off the trading desk, and I take a call, and it's from a mother asking about how she can get resources for her son. I believe he was over in Korea at the time. I'm like, holy shit, I know nothing about what is going on here. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a clinician. All I did was, have this idea that we needed to get service members and veterans connected to resources so that they didn't kill themselves. And that was like a big, oh shit moment of, wow, we better get the capital in the door because I'm not quitting this job I just fought to get on Wall Street to go run a nonprofit full time. And so, needless to say, those first couple of years as a volunteer, were 120-hour weeks trying to, build Stop Soldier Suicide from the ground up. And so, we had to scramble, get some fundraisers together, get some volunteers to answer the phone. And in short order, we had our first employee. We moved the headquarters from, I think what's on the original IRS document was my sister's apartment in Stuyvesant Town in the East Village of Manhattan. We moved it down to North Carolina. Obviously it's a lower cost of operating state, a lot of connectivity to veteran communities down there. And it was, it's that old adage of how do you kind of eat an elephant or a whale? It's one bite at a time, right? So we're always, and we still are, focused on our lofty goal and vision to reduce the veteran suicide rate to the national average by 2030. But, this has become a lifelong, exercise. And like any successful business, you have to pivot, right? So one of the things we knew early on with Stop Soldier Suicide is we couldn't treat our way out of the problem. We knew that there was plenty of demand for our services, but how could we scale a clinical program as a nonprofit? Oh, by the way, you have Department of Veterans Affairs and the Veteran Health Administration, which is the largest single payer healthcare, group in the entire world that's wildly inefficient, but incredibly well resourced. And that's what we were competing against. And so we couldn't recreate that. But what we could do was create a business model that had a lot of operating leverage. We could run the awareness and outreach campaigns about why getting help, right, whether it's for mental health services or substance abuse services or homelessness services, whatever it may be, we could run that awareness and outreach campaign. We could get a lot of people in. We provide our treatment anonymously as it relates to the government, so DoD, VA, military chain of command. We don't report back to them on our clients. And we could start connecting with the over 40,000 veteran serving organizations that exist around the country, right? So we tap into those organizations, which are many of which are great, right? They're very well resourced and they're community based. So we could act as a hub and spoke, if you will, around this inefficient landscape of veteran organizations that are just really hard for a struggling veteran or their family, right, to navigate. And that was the early days. Well, then we said, actually, we do need a clinical center of excellence at Stop Soldier Suicide because there's an intervention we can provide as we're getting these really high-risk veterans, through the door. But the name Stop Soldier Suicide, while it's great for fundraising, is terrible as it relates to a person who's struggling saying, I'm not suicidal. I don't want to talk to these guys. So we created another business, if you will. It's branded Roger. If you go to goroger.org, you'll see a website and a gestalt of a business that doesn't look anything like Stop Soldier Suicide. And that's our clinical facing brand that people feel really comfortable connecting with. And so we've got those clinicians that are operating there and they do incredible work. And oh, by the way, our edge is data, right? One of the key things that we do is we collect data on everything. When someone reaches out, why are they reaching out? What are they, where do they come from? What are they predisposed to? What symptoms are they showing? What treatment modalities work across mental health or across other resources that we're connecting them with? What organizations are responsive, what are not, right? We're measuring all that data because we're using that data to constantly improve our service delivery model. It's so important that we are always trying to get better on behalf of our clients to best accomplish the mission, to scale our business. So one of the things that we realized is that if we really wanted to be successful in this fight against military and veteran suicide, we needed to go way upstream. How do you pull someone in when they're first starting to go down this bad path? And so we had a hypothesis years ago. We could get into a cell phone the way we do in the intelligence community or special operations community to go target or find bad guys, terrorists, narcos, human traffickers. If we could use those tactics, techniques, and procedures to get into a phone, download all the information, right, of someone who had killed themselves, we could potentially start to, through that large language model, like use signals intelligence to see those patterns and then go upstream. And so we created something called Project Black Box. And Project Black Box is our innovative technology business unit, if you will, that is actually going and executing against this mission. So when now we get people who have lost loved ones, and I mean, I've had far too many conversations with family members who are lost survivors, not just from people being killed in action, but who have killed themselves, right? We go to those families now and say, hey, if you never want this to happen to another person, which we know you don't, right? You never want another mother to have to go through this for the rest of her life, right? For every suicide, there are 10 to 15 people impacted. We now get these devices donated. And the beautiful thing about Project Black Box is that other high-risk demographics can benefit from this. Construction workers, first responders, veterinarians, right? Young women communities, right? So we are going to democratize the learnings from Project Black Box to all these other types of groups, and it will fundamentally change suicide prevention efforts writ large. So we're really excited about that. That's a little bit of how we've pivoted and evolved, and how we use technology to improve how we're going upstream and getting people into our care. But I think one of the things you learn on Wall Street is how to be a good salesperson and how to ask for the order, if you will. And so I've shaken down a lot of my friends and fellow Wall Street colleagues for capital, but we've had to create sustainable fundraising engines. And through the years, again, just being very entrepreneurial, thinking asymmetrically about problem solving with limited resources. One of the things that we were very early to was fundraising on Facebook. I used to download these Excel sheets. We were a beta. One of my buddies worked at Facebook, and he was like, "Do you want to try our beta test for fundraising on Facebook?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, we'll try it out." And so I used to download all these, back end Facebook Excel sheets, and I'd start to run these correlations, same way I'd, look and analyze certain stocks and markets and whatnot. And then it started to become very clear, again, pattern recognition, right? That if we made certain investments on Facebook, there was a serious return on that investment in terms of the donation dollars we got. We doubled down on it, we tripled down on it, we quadrupled down on it. And we went from, raising thousands of dollars a month on Facebook to raising hundreds of thousands of dollars a month on Facebook. And I believe now that we've had well over 1 million individual donors on Facebook, and we use that capital to supercharge our growth. But we also have created more sustainable fundraising avenues of approach, if you will, more in the corporate and foundation giving areas. We were never really good at that. We realized that was a weakness of ours. And so now we've diversified our fundraising streams as well. Again, if we can think creatively, right, with a lower capital intensity business model, right, to have this telemedicine, telesuicide prevention offering, which has saved over 6,000 veterans over the last 15 years, right? We've impacted well over 100,000 people. We've never lost an active client. Well, the question now is, how do we take that? How do we take all this data? And then how do we take the technology piece, right? Systematize that. And then again, give that out to the entire community of nonprofits that are trying to prevent suicide. That is really exciting. And so that's what we sell as a value proposition to the funders who invest in us. And it's pretty funny when you run a nonprofit like a business and you pitch it like a business, how you seem to get outsized attention from bigger and bigger funders. So we're really excited about that.